Okay, so before we get into the deep dive itself, just a little bit of background. So I've got some notes over here that you can kind of follow if you need subtitles or you need to sort of follow along. So I'm using the free version of ChatGPT. So I'm just at chatgpt.com, which is described as being great for everyday tasks. It gives me access to GPT-40 Mini and limited access to GPT-40 and other bits and pieces as well, data analysis, file uploads, vision, web browsing, image generation, lots of wonderful stuff. But for the purpose of this deep dive into language learning drills, I'm not going to be needing any of that, so I'm just going to use the free version. So no need for all the stuff that you get in the paid for plus version. I have created an account. I'm logged in to ChatGPT as a recognized user. I haven't done anything in settings at all. I haven't changed anything from the default settings in order to do what I want to do in this video. And I've also not used any custom GPTs as well. There's nothing else in there that I've sort of added or anything like that. So there's no extra new bits I've changed at all. So if you were to just go to chatgpt.com, create yourself an account, and everything I'm going to do in this video you can do as well, completely free of charge. One benefit for being a registered user is that you can save your chats, and that is actually quite an important feature that we're going to be using, showing you how to sort of can these chats, save them, so you can go back later and pick them up again and start using them. That's the whole idea of the deep dive. I'm going to be doing various deep dives across different videos, but I'm going to start off with verbs and then move on to nouns. But in this first one, I'm just going to stick to creating some drills for improving my language learning from sort of the verb side of things in terms of conjugating verbs, etc. I'm going to be doing this in French, but it doesn't matter. This can apply to pretty much any language that you're learning. So you can just, everywhere it says French, you can just turn it into whatever language it is that you're trying to learn. So the title of this first video is Building Reusable Learning Drills with ChatGPT. That's the kind of the top level description, and then this is session one looking at verbs. We'll do a separate one looking at practicing nouns and lots of other grammar bits and pieces later on in future videos. So I'm going to start with the simplest thing possible, which is the present tense and regular verbs in the present tense. So I've kind of got this split screen thing going so you can follow what I'm doing, and also to save a bit of time. So rather than me typing in these instructions all of the time, I'm literally just going to copy and paste them over to the to the chat window, so that we can sort of speed things up in terms of, I'll read them out before I copy them over, but it saves me having to sort of type everything out for you. So on the right I've got my instructions I'm going to be using for this video or for this deep dive, and on the left I've just literally just got my browser open and I'm sort of on and logged into ChatGPT as my user, and it's just waiting to chat with me. So as I say, we're going to kick off with the present tense and regular verbs. So my first instruction I'm going to put into the chat is to say display 25 of the most commonly used French verbs that are regular in the present tense. I'm not giving those verbs, I'm just saying, okay, just pick 25 of the most common ones. We're going to call this list of verbs list 1, and I want them to be displayed in a 2-column table where column 1 is the French verb itself. Column 2 is the English translation. So we'll just kick off with that first instruction first of all. So I can just copy it over to here and we can sort of speed things up a little bit. So as you see, it just goes off and does pretty much what I want. I'm not completely convinced by the list of 25 that it picks. There's certainly some in there that you would expect to be in a top 100 list, but maybe not necessarily in a top 25 list. But it kind of, for the benefit of this first demonstration, it kind of does the job for us. Later on I'll show you how you can actually sort of build canned lists of verbs that you specifically want to sort of practice with. But for now that's good enough. So we've got our 25 verbs. We've got the French verb and we've got the English translation. So my next instruction is basically create a test called test 1. Display one French verb at a time randomly from list 1. And I'll give you the English translation without having to keep typing in the leading 2 all the time. That would be a bit of a pain, and we know we don't really need that. So it's a very, very simple test where it's just going to give me the French verb and I have to provide the English translation. But I'm telling it to call this test, this first kind of instruction, if you like, call it test 1. so that I can then refer to test one later on. I can say go back to test one and let's start again, or give it other instructions relating to this specific test. I'm giving it an identity that we can use later on. So I'm going to do just a few of these first of all, just to sort of show you how it works. So basically, it's come up and said, great start, or great idea. Let's start with test one. And it's talking to me, basically saying I'll display the French verb from list one, and you can provide the English translation without the two. So I can just put in my answer to listen, or listen. And it gets very excited when I get the first one right. So I'll do a couple more. Okay, so very, very basic stuff to get us started, but you can kind of see the benefit of that. If you're trying to just literally learn a bunch of verbs, you can either ask it to provide you a list of sort of open list of verbs that you want to try to learn, or you can, as I'll show you later, you can actually provide it the list of the ones you're specifically trying to learn. Maybe you're trying to focus in on a particular area of verbs, for example. So it's pretty basic stuff. It's just asking you for the infinitive. Very quickly, what you can do though is you can say, okay, let's do it the other way around. So you give me the English and I'll give you the French. Obviously, that's much harder to do. It's much easier to guess the English than the other way around. But again, we're giving it an identity there. So we're calling this one test 2 rather than test 1, which allows us to flip between test 1 and test 2 without having to type in this instruction all over again. We can just say, well, let's go back to test 1, or let's flip to test 2. So again, it's understood what I want. It's given me the English translation. It doesn't say whether that's reflexive, so I'll just assume that's lever. Yeah. That might be Spanish, I can't remember. Oops, yeah. Okay, sometimes my Spanish is going to jump in rather than my French. I am still learning French, by the way. To ask is... That's probably not right either. You can see I'm still learning French at the moment, but there we go. We could do that one, can't we? All right, so you get the gist. So we've got two tests set up. Test 1, French to English. Test 2, English to French. Now, straight away, you can see that I've already stressed my free quota of GPT-4.0 messages for an hour. It's telling me to come back later. It doesn't matter because it just switches to a lesser powerful model, but that model is perfectly adequate for what we're going to be doing in this deep dive. So just ignore the message, just close it off, no need to pay, and we can carry on using the free version. Just to show you that it does recognize this kind of test naming functionality, I'm basically just saying now, okay, I'm bored with test 2, let's go back to test 1 again. It understands that, and I don't need to give it the instruction again, and we're back into English to Spanish, French back into English. So again, much easier doing it the other way around. So to eat and to sing, etc. I know this is all very basic stuff, but it's just setting some sort of background in terms of where we can take this later on in this deep dive. So the next instruction I'm going to give it is display a list of the names of the tests that we've created so far, just to see whether or not it does understand what it is we're actually doing. It kind of gets the gist of what I'm trying to do. So it's recognizing already that we have two tests, test 1 and test 2. Test 1, I didn't give it that title. I just called it test 1, but it's picked that up and it's actually given that as as the name. So French verbs to English translation, or English verbs to French translation. So in this chat, it recognizes those two distinct, separately sort of identifiable tests. My next instruction is I'm going to create a new test called test 3. And in this one, I want it to display some simple sentences to me in the present tense, one at a time, using the verbs from list 1. So generate a sentence that contains any one of the 25 verbs that's in our list that we've called list 1. Display the infinitive of the verb. This is in French as a hint, and I'll give you the correct present tense conjugation. So I'm not trying to make the sentences up myself and trying to put context on these verbs that I'm learning. I'm getting the chat to do that for me, create those random present tense sentences, but rather than give me rather than fill in the conjugated verb, it's giving me, as you can see, the infinitive of the verb. So it's basically just testing my knowledge of present tense conjugation. So we know that that would be j'aime. It does fall over a little bit here that normally when you write this, because this is JE followed by a vowel with the M, you would normally have an apostrophe there. I don't think, actually, let me just do one right and sort of see what happens later on. I think it will accept that as being the correct answer. Yeah, it's kind of got that. When we get the next one that's followed by a verb, I'll put in the apostrophe one to see whether that works. But just for now, so nous dansons. That's correct. Étudier. Okay. Étudie. We're not going to find one that's going to have a verb, a vowel following it, but never mind. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, which is never a good idea. And joue. Okay, so you see that's kind of working all right. So it's kind of the next level on from just taking an infinitive and converting it into English. We're now testing our ability to conjugate our verbs into whatever the necessary conjugation is. Now, bear in mind that this is still regular. So remember, my first instruction was French verbs that are regular in the present tense. So at the moment, test 3 is just testing regular conjugations. So just again, I haven't told it that, but just again, just to make sure that it's following the script, as it were. Give me a list of the names of the tests that you've created. And now you can see in test 3, it's giving it simple sentences in the present tense using the list of verbs in list 1, infinitive to present tense conjugation. So I've got 3 tests I can flip around. I can just say, let's go back to test 2, pick it up, and carry on. So I've got a nice little set of tests already. And what's going on in the background, if I just pull the sidebar out, it's actually created this chat and giving it a kind of a name from the first instruction. So what I tend to do with these is I give them a quick rename. So we're just going to call this Deep Dive 1, just so we've got something to recognise it as. Okay, so it just renames that chat or whatever. And you can see I've got loads of other chats that I've been playing around with, and we'll be looking at those in future videos. But I've gone out of that particular chat that we're in. I can go back into Deep Dive 1. Okay, ignoring the message about running out of the initial quota of messages. And I can say something like, let's, in fact, I've got something here, right? Actually, no, I can basically give it an instruction, say, give me the list of tests that you created so far, just to prove that it remembers the tests. Okay, so even though I've gone out, this could be days later, I'll come back in again, and in this chat, it remembers these tests have been created. So if I then say, can we carry on with test 3? And you can see it just picks up exactly where we were, and it's continuing to ask me to conjugate my regular verbs. So we'll just do that one quickly. And away we go. So we can come in and out whenever we want. We can jump around the test, and it'll remember where we are with that. So that's the sort of present tense regular. Let's switch and do something as present tense irregular. So what I'm saying here is I'm still in the same chat. I can do all this in the one chat. This time, display a list of the 25 most common French verbs that are irregular in the present tense, and we'll call this list 2. So you remember list 1 is my 25 common regular verbs. List 2 is going to be my common 25 irregular verbs, and you've got the usual suspects there beginning with être and avoir, and in the language you're learning I'm sure it'll be sort of similar irregular verbs being picked up. What I'm going to do now is give it an extra instruction and say display list 2 again, this time as a column 2 table. In fact, it's actually done it already, so it's that's thrown me. So it's actually kind of learnt from my previous instruction. I didn't tell it to give me a two column table when I created list 1. I told it to do it on the second instruction, but it's already remembered that that's really the format that I wanted in. So it's given me the French verb and the English translation. I don't need to tell it to do that again. Now what I'm going to do is, this is quite clever, that I can refer back to one of my previous tests. So I'm saying here, make a new test, call it test 4, because we have test 1, 2 and 3 at the moment. It's the same as test 3, but it uses the verbs from list 2. So I'm getting it to refer back to my description of test 3, which tells it to use the verbs that are in list 1. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to give me the sentence with the infinitive of the verb displayed in brackets, but it's going to be driven from the irregular verbs in list 2 rather than the regular verbs in list 1. I haven't got to give it all that instruction all over again because I've built and saved a test. If I want a similar test, I can just tell it, go look at that previous test and do this different thing with it, for example. Alright, so we've started our new test 4, and you can see straight away that the first verb it's testing me on is être, which is an irregular verb in French. Alright, and we can do our usual conjugations for the verbs, for our irregular verbs. Okay, so far everything has been in the present tense, and we've got our 4 tests set up. We're now going to switch to a different tense. This is the present perfect, the I have done something in English. So the next instruction is here. So make a new test, call it test 5 we're up to now. It's the same as test 3. So again, it's our sentence with the infinitive there. But now the sentences must be in the present perfect tense. Use only the verbs that have a regular past participle. Alright, so picking that up, dropping it in. So it's modelled on test 3, but we're just looking for, I haven't told it what table to use, though I've told it test 3 uses table 1, if you remember rightly, the regular verbs, but they're regular in the present tense. What I'm asking you to do now is just pick out the ones where the French verb has a regular past participle. So it's the simplest version of my present perfect test so far. So all of these verbs that are going to be requested here are going to be having a regular past participle following the rule. But I've still got to guess whether or not, particularly in French, whether or not it's avoir or être that provides that present perfect. If you're familiar with the grammar of that, you know that it's a compound tense where you need sort of 2 elements to it. So in this particular example, this was going to be j'ai chanté. I haven't got my French keyboard switched on, so I'm not going to be able to put that accented E in, so it's probably going to complain about that. Actually, it didn't, but it's kind of accepted that as being the correct one. So nous avons fini. Alright, so you can see it's testing me with my present perfect, which is exactly what we're looking for. So that's test 5. So we just do a quick summary of where we are with our tests. Right, so in this one chat, I can come in any time I want and just continue with these tests and really sort of build up my drilling for my present tense in both directions, my conjugation of present tense, both regular and irregular, and then into my present perfect tense with regular past participles. All good stuff. Just to complete the picture on the present perfect, what we're going to do now is I'm going to first of all ask it to give me a list of 25 of the most common French verbs that have an irregular past participle. So test 5 was focusing on regular past participles. Test 6, as it ends up, or it will be when I create it, is going to look at French verbs that are irregular with past participles. So again, I'm just basically, rather than me trying to think what those 25 most common ones are, I've got it here. It's actually quite good because it's given me the French verb, it's given me the irregular past participle. I didn't ask it to do that, but it's given it to me anyway. And it's obviously given me the English translation of the French verb, not the past participle, but of the infinitive of the French verb. Just sort of eye scanning the list, that looks like all of the usual suspects of irregular past participles. So what we're now going to do, don't need to look at the tests again, so I'm going to give it a new instruction, which is basically just copy test 5, which was the one that was the present perfect one for regular past participles, and just make a new test, call it test 6. I didn't actually stress this, but this is list 3 we've created now, so it's a separate list that we created, and we're going to tell it basically in this test, so do the same as you did in test 5, but use the irregular verbs in list 3 rather than what was the regular verbs in list 2. All right, so again, we know that these are irregular ones. So she, nu von fate, and on it goes. So that's testing my knowledge of irregular past participles in French. I'm going to change the or sort of add some functionality into this particular test, into test 6. What I'm saying here is for test 6, display the full correct answer after I've given you my answer, because you can see as you scroll back here, basically it's saying to me, give me the conjugation for the present perfect. I give it, and basically on the next one it then just says correct. So you go, here's your next one, what's the conjugation? And I give it, and all I'm getting is that's right. It would be nice, just from a learning point of view, to be able to see the full sort of completed, just for sort of reinforcement. So what I'm doing now is saying every time I've given you my answer, when you say yeah that's right, well actually give me the full sentence to show my answer in there. Or obviously more useful, if I get it wrong, it'll show me the right answer as well. Okay, so ils okay, so this is the extra line that's been added. Again, this is the extra line that's been added in there to show the completed sentence from up here. So it's just for sort of reinforcement side of things, to help you, see the answer that you gave in context. Just to prove that it's actually working, I'm going to do the next one and make an obvious mistake. And it's very polite, you'll notice. It looks like there may have been a mix-up with your response. Well, yeah, just a bit. So then it obviously hasn't given me the correct answer. I've just messed it up. So it's asking me to try it again, for example. If I actually give it a slightly closer wrong answer, so if I say something like that, it sort of is a bit more helpful. It's sort of the correct almost, but the correct conjugation is this, and then it's actually put the right one in. So it kind of recognises the difference between a completely jumbled up response versus a not far off the correct answer response, and then it'll give me the right answer, etc. If I go back out of my chat session, so I'll just pick any other chat, and then go back into our deep dive 1. We'll continue to get the messages about running out of chat. So go back into deep dive 1. And if I once again ask it to give us a list of everything we've got so far, just to kind of slightly labouring the point, but just to prove that it's still okay, it knows exactly what we've got. I've got all these tests set up now, and I can just keep building this up and up and up. You could potentially have these in separate chats. Doesn't have to be everything in the one chat, or you can come in here and this is your single place where you go and you can just keep jumping around the different tests, trying to figure out which one you want to work on and kind of focusing on doing that. And again, just to labour the point, but I went out of the chat, I come back in again, and I just say, well, can we carry on with test 6? And we're back to test 6, and we can just keep on going. It kind of remembers exactly where you were. If you ask it to save scores, it says I can't save things because you're using the free version, but it kind of is saving because it remembers the chats. You can see all your previous chats that you've been playing with. They get archive off after a certain number of days, or you can control the archiving. And what I tend to do is I tend to keep going to the bottom for the most sort of the oldest chat I've played with, play with that, and then it ends up going back in the today one. So I can always keep trying my oldest tests first of all, and keep cycling around the tests to make sure I'm getting everything covered in all the different kind of tests that I've created. You can see the various things that I've got there. It's not just verbs. I've gone into demonstrative adjectives, possessive adjectives, genders, etc., etc. Okay, what I'm going to do now, we're still on the sort of the verbs deep dive. So we've done the present tense, regular and irregular. We've done the present perfect, regular and irregular. What I'm just going to do now, just to sort of change a couple of additional tenses, we're going to do the future simple. And as in many languages, French has regular future stems, but there are some irregular future stems as well. So I'm going to just create one test called test 7. Again, I haven't got to describe what I want that test to be because I'm just saying model it on test 3. But now the sentence must be in the future simple. So that the sample sentence you give me with a randomly picked verb that we know is regular in the French future tense. Give me that test for the future rather than for the present. So test 7. So it's exactly the same format as before, but now we want the future simple conjugation for the randomly selected verb. So here we have parler. So the for je, that's parlerai. That's caught me. Something like that, I think. Yeah, okay, so that's working okay as my future simple regular. That was test 7. Now what I'm going to do is just say, well, give me a list of the 25 of the most common French verbs that have an irregular future simple stem, because the regular is basically the infinitive of the verb, but there are verbs in French that have irregular stems. So again, it knows what I want. It's giving me a nice table and all the usual suspects again. It's giving me the irregular future simple stem, which isn't the infinitive, and it's giving me the English translation as well. And so what I'm going to do is basically just say, well, again, give me the same test. It's the same as test 7, so it's the future one, but pick the verbs from list 4 rather than from the previous list 3 or whatever it was. All right, so I'm not modelling it on list test 3, the original source test. I'm basically just saying continue this one as the future simple, and basically just use this table of irregular stemmed verbs rather than your regular ones. So URAS, so on. Okay, so that's working fine and doing the correct testing for the irregular future stems. So that's pretty much it. So if I just do one more list of all the tests that we've created. So I can literally jump in anytime, come back and pick up the lists. I beg your pardon. So yeah, so we've got it's recognised the lists. I keep showing you the summary of the tests that we've created. You can also refer back to your lists as well. So you can kind of, if you want to build more tests, you can refer to whichever list you're most interested in. So there's full memory there. As long as you allocate it assign it a particular identity, a particular name, and it's free-form text, you can call it what you like, it will remember that identity, and you can refer to it in your later instructions. And that's really where the power of this comes from, without having to keep putting in the same instructions over and over again. So you can see we've got 8 tests in total. Where's my instruction? This one. So we've got 4 lists we've created of verbs in different formats, and we've got our 8 tests that we've created. Now I've done that kind of, I don't know how long that's taken to do that, but it's like 15 minutes worth of copying and pasting to create this environment that I can then just reuse over and over again. But I just wondered whether or not it was possible to kind of do some other bits and pieces with it as well. So I've got a couple of experiments that I thought I was going to try at the end of this deep dive to see if they would work. So experiment 1 is using tests as templates. So for example, what I'm going to do here is say create matching copies of these tests with SPA appended to each test name, but in all tests replace French with Spanish. Okay, so what I'm saying here is take all of the tests that you created, these ones here, create me a underscore SPA version of each test, and rather than it testing me on French verbs all the time, test me on English ones. So it's creating a fresh set of tests that are English, Spanish to English rather than French to English. With that one instruction, right, you can see it's basically, and it's substituted the French for the Spanish every time. So for example, if we do test 3 SPA, which is simple sentences in the present tense using verbs from a list of common Spanish verbs. Right, that's basically what it's going to be. Okay, and you can see I've literally got hablar, so you'll hablo, comemos. Right, so I've literally built a completely matching set of tests with one command to make them Spanish flavored tests rather than French flavored tests, all in the same chat. So it's really, really powerful how you can kind of, once you've assigned an identity to something, how you can then build and model off of the back of that. That was the first experiment I was going to try. The second experiment, how many did I have? A couple more. The second experiment was to see whether or not I could, rather than trying to sort of build these tests one at a time with me copying and pasting, whether it would be possible with one kind of batch instruction to create the entire environment. Once you've got that in a text file, were you to lose these chats, for example, would you be able to recreate this without having to do what I've just done on the sort of first 20 minutes of this video? So I'm going to sort of basically come out of that deep dive one, which is the one we're in at the moment. Just kind of come out of there. Click on here and just start a new chat. All right, get rid of this. All right, so we're back where we were right at the beginning of this deep dive in a new chat. It hasn't got a name yet because I haven't done anything with it. And I'm basically just going to give it this batch list of instructions. One hit, the entire thing. I'm going to copy and paste the whole thing into the message and see if it can build that environment in one hit. So I'm basically telling it to build my lists. So I've batched up my list descriptions as my common French verbs, etc. Maybe we want to make this 25 rather than 100. That might be a bit more appropriate. So just build up my common irregular and regular verbs, past participles, etc. So build my 4 lists. As part of my instructions, I'm saying, well, just display those. So when I put this command in, I can see it's actually done that part of so almost like an interrupt, if you like, so I can actually see what's going on. And then after that, I then want it to create a bunch of tests. So I've copied the instructions into this file, but made the instructions tighter so that I can really use as few words as possible to basically say, create test 1, do this, copy, make test 2 the same as test 1, but do it this way. So I'm going through creating test 1, test 2, 3, 4, 5, right the way to test 7. Basically just doing what I did in the video, but in a tighter language, if you like. Then give me, as a second interrupt, give me a list of the names of the tests that we created. And then right at the very end of the instruction is, okay, let's do test 5. Right, so all of that lot in one hit, in one instruction. Right, so it's listed my verbs, listed my lists. It's took all that. It's given me my list of lists that it's created, and it's given me my list of tests that it's created, and it's immediately gone into test 5 and started to ask me for test 5. So once you've got this thing canned, you can kind of make different flavors of it. You're never going to lose. Obviously, you're going to lose your previous answers. The kind of history of the chat, but not the the structure of the chat. So it can kind of do batch instructions, quite detailed instructions, and kind of not lose the plot. I'm going to kill that one and just start a new chat. And you'll notice that it's given it a name, that whole list. It just kind of picked the first thing it was told to do, and it's kind of sort of generally given it a sort of general description. I'd normally rename my chats to something more meaningful, but I'm just going to delete that one because we're not using that one anymore. So we're back into a fresh chat, no name applied to it at all, and what I need to do is go back into Deep Dive 1. And even though I've gone off and done all that other stuff, I'm back in Deep Dive 1. It's everything is still there. And what I thought would be an interesting thing would be whether or not it could cross over the separately identified things. Remember, we've got 8 tests built into this particular chat. Is it able to fly around those different tests, understanding what the test is, and just randomly ask a question from different tests? So you completely randomize the entire drilling that you're doing with the test that you've created in. So rather than jumping from one test to another, just totally randomize the whole thing. Okay. So basically, my instruction is one at a time, ask me a question randomly selected from one of the current tests. Right. So it's actually, this one is, what's it asking me? This is looking for the present tense conjugation of savoir. So I can't remember what test number that particularly is. I should have added an instruction to say, well, show me what test number it is, then I'll know where I'm coming from. But let me just fill that one in anyway. So that's nous savons. All right, so it's got that one correct. Present tense, is this working? Let me change this instruction. In your question, please display the name of the test that you took the question from. Let's just see if that's better, because what I'm looking for it to do is really give me the name of the test. So I haven't got to try and read the instruction to try and figure out what it is it wants me to do. That's better, right? That's what I'm looking for. Sort of, because it's basically just giving me the name of the test, not the bit that it added on the end. But it's a bit better because I can still see that, you know, it's gone to a different test now. I need to work on that a little bit more to get the description a bit better. I can see what it wants in the question at the very bottom. There's quite a lot of sort of detail to try and look at when you're trying to answer the questions quickly. But I can see that this question has come from test 6 and it's the present perfect. So we'll just do that one anyway. To D, I think that is. Right, yeah, that's correct. Yep, and now we're going to test 8 and it wants the future simple of LA. Yeah, so it's working. It's literally jumping around the different tests and randomly pulling out questions, which I think is a really kind of strong feature to be able to really randomize your drilling. What I can also do is say, well, give me a table of my questions and answers. And it's quite good because it's actually sort of showing me what test it came from, what the infinitive of the verb that was kind of the root of what was being tested, the sentence that was given, the answer I gave, and the correct answer. So you can kind of use this as, if you're going to do 10 minutes of this kind of testing, you can, let me do a few more of this. Let's carry on. Does it know what I mean by that? Yes, it does. So we're still in test 8. So we'll do a couple of, make a couple of mistakes. So this one is future simple. So we'll just say something like fair to give it the wrong answer. Right, so I've given that one a mistake. Okay, annoyingly it's going to keep updating the table. So if I say don't show the table every time, right, you can be as rude as you like. It kind of says, okay, yeah, I got that, I understand, don't want the table anymore. So this one wants the present perfect of reservoir for vous. So vous avons reçu. I can't do my soft C because I haven't got my keyboard set. But it's kind of picked it up, and it's actually picked it up as being almost correct. All right, so that's another wrong one. We'll try and do one more right one. So future simple of choisir. 0A. Right, so we've got a kind of a mix there. So if we go back to that table and ask it to show me the table again, even though I told it not to keep showing me the table. Right, so some of them I've got right, some of them I've got wrong. It's actually a bit confusing because it's showing just what I entered, but it's showing the full correct answer, not just the bit that needed to be added. But if I just close that table off a bit by saying show only the questions where I got the wrong answer, right, which is in this case only the one where I did the wrong su part of it, and then I can say, well, just test me on those ones again. So you can imagine if you're doing like 20 minutes of testing and you're getting nearly all of the questions right, you might just want to have a go back and just try the ones that you got wrong. So in theory, if I do that, the very next question should be this one from test 6 for the for reservoir. And there you go. So it's just tested me on that one question. So that's the end of the deep dive for verbs. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour of the way that you can kind of, if I go back to the top of my notes, it's really sort of building a reusable learning drill with ChatGPT to be able to sort of come in and figure out what it is I'm trying to learn. I mean, I've done a lot of this with having it choose the verbs that I want it to test me on. Later on I'm going to show you on another video how you can actually sort of pre-populate it rather than it picking the verbs or whatever it is you want to be tested on. You can provide the sort of the opening list, as it were, but hopefully that gives you a flavour of what you can get for absolutely for free. You don't have to pay for anything now, just basic stuff, and hopefully you thought that was quite useful, and I'll see you in the next video.